I grew up in a very small town called Remigereau, getting booked for quite a few gigs, and I was making quite a bit of money and still had this feeling that perhaps being in commercial finance wasn't where I was meant to be. And
go out and just try something that maybe is pretty unconventional.
If we lost that amount, fine, and we'd have an amazing experience. Like, I'd thought about picking up the phone and then thought one day, I'm just going to do it. It is a relationship management tool designed to align your worlds.
So how do people think about that, right? Because it's like a pretty unique idea.
They trust their partner and they just want to use this to enhance an already great relationship. 65% of users say that the amount of quality time that they spend with their partner has increased as a result of using Cupla. When we're able to get the product out there, know that we've made a win for ourselves, and know the impact that it's going to have on others.
This is Pavlyukovskyy, and welcome to the TechMates podcast, where my partner Hendrik and I explore how Kiwi and Aussie founders are reshaping the future and what sets them apart. Hendrik and I have been part of successful companies in Silicon Valley and Europe, and now bring that expertise to partner with entrepreneurs in Australasia. By sharing the personal stories of successful Kiwi and Aussie founders and how they got here, we hope to inspire you to dream big. This is TechMates, bringing an outsider's perspective to the stories of those daring to disrupt down under. Let's dive in.
All right, cool. Let's start. Hey, Erika, I'm glad to have you on the podcast.
Hey, thank you so much for having me.
Cool. So, Erika, you're the founder of Cupla, and we want to talk about Cupla, but also about your personal journey and kind of how you ended up founding Cupla, what led you to it, and how you're seeing the future of the company and how you run it at the moment. So just to get us started, I would love to learn a little bit more about your personal background. You're born and raised in New Zealand, right?
Correct. Yeah, I grew up in a very small town called Remigereau, which is sort of blink and you miss it, about an hour south of Auckland. Went to a primary school with about 60 kids from the ages of 5 to 12, so super tiny country school. And yeah, we didn't have a lot, so it was a pretty humble upbringing. I think that humble upbringing really influenced getting into entrepreneurship because I just wanted to really make a better life for myself.
Did you, like in your early upbringing or like in your teenage years, did you already think about entrepreneurship? Was that always like something that you had in mind?
Maybe you can also dive into like what influences you had growing up, because growing up in a small town, you definitely are limited by kind of what you see and kind of role models you have, right?
So, so growing up in a small town, and I guess with the background that I had, there was always a push to have like quite a secure financial situation. And so for me, I didn't like the look of blood, so being a doctor was out. And so that sort of left like accounting and law. And so I went to university, studied first year law, absolutely hated it, and thought I'm going to get a job in finance. And I guess without really knowing it, what I was trying to do was create this sort of backstop for myself. So no matter what happened, I would have a job to go to. And I guess that's a little bit funny now thinking because of what AI is going to do to law and accounting. But anyway, so was really creating this security for myself and for my future. And I went into a consulting role in one of the big four. And that was really my first sort of introduction into the concept of selling time for money. And I thought, wow, this is mad. I had my internship there and I could see all of the other, if we get given a bunch of work to do in a day, and I could see all the interns finishing their work and trying to look busy so they could, wait until the most senior person in the room left until they could leave. And I thought, oh, this is like, there has to be something better than this. And so moved from there pretty swiftly and went into some other commercial finance roles. Did a bit of time in FMCG and the like, and enjoyed progressing into smaller and smaller teams as my career went on. At the same time, I was DJing part-time and had always sort of had this interest in music and, getting booked for quite a few gigs, and I was making quite a bit of money and still had this feeling that perhaps being in commercial finance wasn't where I was meant to be. And so I thought, stuff it one day, I've got this backstop now where I know I can get a job. I'm going to go and do this music thing full time for a while. And I guess that was the first time I sort of leapt out of the norm, I guess, and thought, you know, it wasn't quite entrepreneurship, but it's working for myself. And, you know, and so I could see then that there was another way, another alternative, rather than answering to the man, so to speak.
What kind of music?
And, you know, started doing a bit of touring and travel overseas with that as well.
How did you get into that? How did that start?
I was working at a bar throughout university to, you know, pay for my schooling and living costs, and just got chatting to the guy that was playing the music there one day and thought, this looks pretty cool. Can you give me some lessons? I played the piano and violin when I was younger, so it wasn't totally foreign to me. But yeah, loved it.
Interesting. Would you say that kind of like just asking somebody to give you lessons and then going and kind of doing it more professionally, would you say that's a trait that you always had, or kind of how did that, because that's a pretty important trait, I think, for entrepreneurs, right? Is to like just go out and just try something that maybe is pretty unconventional.
Yeah, totally. And also not being afraid to start something that you don't know when you don't know what you're doing. And, you know, just being really willing to jump in and give it a go and look a bit foolish to start with, because you have to in order to get good at something. Yeah. And I was, you know, didn't really know how bad I was at the start. So I was like, yeah, sure, I'll play that gig, and got good pretty rapidly after that. Yeah, that led me to understanding that there were different ways of working. And so on the side, I you know, after a while, just playing gigs got a little bit repetitive, because all of my friends were not working on Friday and Saturday nights, and I had no one to hang out with during the week. So started getting some consulting clients in the tech space as well. So, you know, helping.
So you were doing DJing full time at some point?
Yeah, at one point, yeah, in my early 20s. So yeah.
So, and what was that like? I mean, did you have a conversation with I don't know, your parents or your partner, maybe, like, where you were like, hey, I'm going to quit this like really lucrative consulting job and go be a DJ? Did they think you were crazy? Like, what was that like?
Yeah, I think I might have not sort of communicated as much as, you know, quite what I was doing. So I'd always said, oh yeah, no, I'm still doing some finance work. I've got some things going on the side, and probably not, you know, using the language, I'm quitting my day job and I'm becoming a full-time DJ, because I don't know how they would have taken that, my parents, but yeah.
Yeah.
Were you ever worried about your future at that point? I mean, obviously you had the kind of finance background, but were you ever thinking, oh no, like this is not going to last forever and I should probably go do something more stable?
No, and I think that was what the really magical thing was about having that qualification. So I did become a chartered accountant, and I've still got my qualification now, just in case. Like, it's having that backstop that I think a lot of people might have had from their parents. You know, if you come from a family with means, I had to create that for myself. And I think having that really enabled me to take risks and know that I could go back to that. I'd had enough people that I'd met through different roles that were doing interesting things, and people that were always looking for someone with a commercial brain that also had, you know, some practical sort of like general business acumen as well, because often people in finance are, you know, there's a bit of a stereotype there that we can be difficult to talk to, or, you know, we don't really understand actual business. And so understanding that my skill set was in demand allowed me this opportunity to just, you know, to take those risks. And it's what's really enabled me, I think, to take the risks throughout the rest of my career as well, and definitely starting businesses.
Okay. I mean, I think, you know, a lot of folks who will be listening to this, probably a lot of them will be thinking about going on their own entrepreneurial journey. Like, what was your thought process, like, in your head of like, I'm going to go and just like try this thing, right? Like, because sounds like that was the first step for you to unlock the possibilities of going and doing Cupla now.
Yeah.
So what's like the right way, would you say, is the right way to think about these kinds of decisions for somebody?
Yeah. So the first business I started, you know, after my brief stint as a musician was Synthony, which was really a sort of a all of the things coming together all at once. So Synthony was a collaboration of orchestra and DJs playing the biggest dance tracks of the last 30 years. But what was really unique about that business was that we created the music act itself. And so if you think about promoting an event, you're reliant on one act. And so say you're bringing out Elton John, well, Elton can only be in one place at one time. But what was amazing about Synthony was that we were able to productize every single element of that show. So similar to something like Cirque du Soleil, where it has a very consistent format and many performers can perform the show. So the ultimate is it happening in multiple cities on the same night, which has happened. And so when I thought about building Synthony, it was something that I personally really wanted to do, and I knew that it was going to be a hit. And for me, it was about taking that really calculated risk. So I knew how I did the numbers on it, which is where my commercial background comes in. And I worked out what is the maximum amount of money I'm prepared to lose and got really comfortable with that number. So, I think that's where the commercial comes into play, is just having like a really strong understanding over what things are going to cost and what is the level of risk that I'm comfortable with taking.
Got it. Yeah, it's a really interesting way of thinking about it, because I think Naval Ravikant, he is like this famous angel investor and kind of a part of our fund as well. And he has this quote about with venture or with like startups, it's like you can only lose 1x, but like your upside is like uncapped, right? It can be like 10x, 100x. So that's a really interesting way of you phrasing that, that you got really comfortable with like the amount you could lose. Yeah. And then everything else, like, right.
Was a bonus.
Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah, and I knew if nothing else, if we lost that amount, fine, and we'd have an amazing experience, and we would have created something awesome. So, and thankfully, we didn't lose that amount. The show went on to be a really big hit. We did one show in the first year, 2 in the second year, and it's just done its 50th show. Just this weekend, actually, was the opening act for the F1 in Las Vegas. So there you go.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So this was this a like a production company, or was this actually like a product? What was can you tell us more about what was the kind of genesis? So you had this idea, you explained kind of wanting to combine top hits with orchestras and DJing all together. Yeah. So it was actually a production, kind of you were staging.
So it's a full stage production. So live. Full orchestra, 60 pieces, electronic elements, full light show, lasers, LED, video production, live vocalists, everything. So the first shows were written in my home studio. So I actually pulled together the track selection and built the show and composed the electronic elements, and then led the creative direction with the arranger who compiled all the orchestral music. And then we're able to sort of package that show up, and we can, because of the way that the show is constructed, we can provide that to a local orchestra, and they're able to, there you go. Yeah.
So this is it.
Yeah, that's it.
Wow.
Yeah, and so it meant a lot of these shows were actually running during COVID, where everyone was coming in and out of lockdown, and people weren't able to fly in. And so because of the nature of the show and us not being reliant on an individual act, it meant that these shows were able to run with local talent here and in Australia on very short notice.
That sounds like
you seem to have Oh, sorry.
Sorry. That sounds like a very sort of rewarding type of work, very creative, right? But is there it also sounds like a very big operation that you have to run. Is there a lot of kind of operations involved? And is that something you knew when you were getting into it?
Yeah, I mean, the operations in terms of like event operations, that's something that you can quite easily hire for. So we had a team of people that would run the execution of, getting people into the venues and contract management and that sort of thing. My role was primarily on building the show. creating the concept itself, and then getting customers to attend. So yeah, it was a really amazing journey in terms of really balancing what we needed for the customer to make them have an amazing experience and have the best night of their lives with the commercial, because I think you can look at this and go, the sky's the limit in terms of production and how much you could have spent to build a show like this. So yeah, I think coming from that commercial background was really, really helpful in getting this to be, a profitable business.
Yeah. And did you make any mistakes in hindsight while you were running this business?
So many mistakes. I look back and it actually makes my palms sweat now thinking about the first show that we did, which was held together with duct tape and dreams, and just how many things could have gone wrong and how underprepared we were. And it's actually just a miracle that nothing did go wrong and we were able to see another day. It was definitely down to luck rather than good management. But when you do something new and something really innovative, people are really forgiving and they're just happy. The people that were there on the first night were just happy to be part of the start of something. And so, although the show now is a lot more polished, it's, and a lot more resilient from a tech standpoint. There's something magic in those first shows where we did make all the mistakes.
I'm saying you had shows all over the world, Europe, Sydney, New Zealand, Mexico.
Yeah, so I actually exited that business at the start of 2020. So it's now run by a much bigger team, and they're really doing amazing things with it. But yeah, the original shows that I wrote are still playing. So yeah.
Wow. So, and it was your idea. You had this idea. What was that? Can you tell us the genesis story? Like where were you? How'd you have the idea? What was the steps you took to?
I'd seen a similar concept play in the UK. I'd just seen it on YouTube and thought that is never going to come to New Zealand because it's just, we're so far away. And wouldn't it be great? And sort of thought, I've probably got enough knowledge of this space to attack this if I can get the right people involved. And so I had a co-founder on that who had run big festivals before. And I called a couple of the orchestras that were based in Auckland. And when we spoke to the Auckland Symphony Orchestra, they were just really excited about the project. And it was that level of enthusiasm and, we can definitely do this, that really got it across the line from there. But yeah, it really just started with that single phone call.
So you needed the Auckland Symphony Orchestra to basically kind of say, we're going ahead. This is really cool. We'd like to try it, right? Because I guess without them, it would have been pretty hard to do it.
Yeah, and I just had no idea from a technical standpoint, how do you even get musicians to play dance music? So I really needed someone that was where this was their bread and butter, and they were wanting to do it. They were excited to do it because it was going to be a lot of learnings from everyone involved. And we spoke to another couple of orchestras who were they were sort of au fait with the idea. And it was when we met with them and they were so excited about it and we're like, this is going to be epic. That was when we knew we had the right partner.
Interesting. What did that teach you? I mean, it sounds like there was some sales involved, right? Like going to a bunch of different folks, and it sounds like this was like if you're think about this in terms of like startups, this is like your big key pilot customer or something. If you're doing B2B sales or enterprise sales, right? And you kind of needed one of these locked in order to move forward. What did that teach you about, I don't know, the process, sales, maybe something more generally?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first bit is just having that willingness to pick up the phone. That was something I agonized over for months. Like I'd thought about picking up the phone and then thought one day, stuff it, I'm just going to do it. So taking that first step can actually be terrifying, even if it's just a phone call. But then I think identifying people that you want to be on the journey with you is so important. If you've got the first part of the journey is always going to be really hard. There's going to be lots of learnings. Failure is likely. And so if you're not in the journey with people that are equally as excited about the possibility as you are. It's going to be painful. And you don't want to be dragging anyone along for the ride. It's got to be, the enthusiasm's got to be there, the outlook and the excitement for the possibilities and what we were creating. It definitely kept me going. It was funny, at one of the first rehearsals, I got in the car and I cried. I was like, this is going to be a disaster. This is so terrible. I had the guy from the symphony orchestra say to me, don't worry, it'll be fine. And so just having that, that reassurance in those moments.
That's amazing. Yeah. I'd say that's super important. Like a lot of, I think, early stage companies, the reason they fail is because co-founder breakups, co-founder splits. We see that sometimes. And so being on the journey with the right folks is really important.
Yeah.
And I guess that's, kind of doing this startup now with your husband. That's like your life partner. So you found a partner who you can do a lot of different things with. Not just family, but also a startup. So I don't know if you want to kind of segue into that now, or is there anything else that you did after?
I'd be curious about the exit story. So you left that business in 2020.
Yeah.
What made you leave the business? And tell us more about it.
I decided to sell at the 2018, start of 2019. Around the time of COVID as well. Just to be honest, it was probably the biggest thing leading to it was burnout. I had been working such extreme hours and wearing so many different hats in that business that it just got untenable, and I'd started to lose the joy for it. It was the highest of highs and then the lowest of lows, and just like absolute exhaustion. I just probably had enough. So managed to find a buyer pretty quickly. And then I worked alongside the buyer for a couple of years. There was an opportunity for me to stay in that business for longer, but I think decided that as a founder, having a minority stake in a business I'd started wasn't for me. And then also just around, events really collapsing, found ourselves with a little bit of time. So live events, obviously the thing to take the biggest hit. Perhaps the second thing was movies. And my husband was the co-founder of a company called Movio, who do data analytics for the film industry. So overnight, both of us were sort of watching our businesses take a turn for the worst. We were thinking about what we could do next, and then we came up with Cupla. And so it was sort of a collision of timing, really. Because we had both been working in our own businesses, and Will has children from a previous relationship, and we're both very busy social people. We'd found ourselves becoming like ships in the night. It was so easy to get to the end of a month and realize that we hadn't really had spent much quality time with each other, let alone had a date night or anything like that. We had sought out a product where just, both of us jumped online and thought, we're just going to solve this. Like, let's just download an app and figure this out. There must be something. And quickly discovered there wasn't anything that really addressed our immediate issue of just being able to see each other's calendars and know what each other had on. And so we thought, this is interesting. And we got talking to some other couples, just trying to understand how much of a problem this was. And I think this really led us to an insight. What we found was that if the everyday was taken care of, couples would have more capacity to plan and actually have more quality time with each other. And so that insight is really what we sought to build, why we sought to build out Cupla. And so, a bit about Cupla. It's a mobile app. It's available on the App Store and Google Play. It is a relationship management tool designed to align your worlds, streamline time and tasks, and really allow you to focus on that quality time with your partner. So we've got a suite of organizational tools. the ultimate shared calendar, which pulls in all of my calendars. So I've got work and personal calendars and the like, alongside all of my partner's calendars, so we can identify the free space. And then we've got some really helpful hints and resources to help remind couples to book that quality time in with each other. Yeah.
Interesting.
So the number one problem you're trying to solve is basically creating more space for couples to spend quality time together and kind of get rid of all the day-to-day admin stuff.
Yeah. We think about it in terms of removing all the friction points that couples experience when they're trying to coordinate their lives. So if you think about what the friction is, it is just understanding what's on my partner's calendar, knowing when an appropriate time for them is going to be free, understanding what they've got on their to-do list, what I want them to do that's on the to-do list, forgetting things, all of those sort of like things that create niggles between couples. We want to eliminate all of that so that couples have more capacity just to focus on each other.
Interesting. Now, I mean, I think, we have all kinds of tools to manage our work lives, right? Like calendars, email, Slack. Now, relationship management, I've never heard of a relationship management tool until we met. So how do people think about that, right? Because it's like a pretty unique idea, pretty novel idea to take this idea that you have at work, which is like very closely kind of like managing stuff, scheduling, to-dos, and bring it into the personal realm.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? Because we have all of these tools for our work life. And yet most of us would agree that our relationships are more important than our work maybe not all the time, but definitely as we go through life, I think it's fair to say the quality of our relationships defines the quality of our life. But yet tools to help us be better in relationships are very much in their infancy. We've got really comfortable with using tools to meet people through dating apps, for example. Yeah, the relationship space is really untapped. And so I think it's a really exciting and interesting time to be in this space. There's definitely, there's definitely some pushback, from some people in terms of, why do I need an app to manage my relationship? I just talk to my spouse. And absolutely, I think that would be great. But the reality is that people are becoming increasingly busy and it's just not that easy. And so I think there's definitely a space for us to be able to help people really increase visibility. And really, we just want to make it easy for everyone to, get that quality time in and get the most out of their relationship.
Got it. And I remember there was an app back in 2016, 2017. I think we talked about this. That was like what was that called? Relationship management app? That was.
I think it was called Cupla.
Okay. Oh yeah. And what I think was interesting when we first started talking to you and Will was, you had this kind of thesis around the space, which was that you need to first have people be comfortable with the idea of meeting each other online, which is like the first step, right? And then after that sort of generation that met online, which I think is now maybe like it's been around for 10 years, right? People meeting each other through dating apps. Now taking that next step, which is actually being in the relationship, making sure it works, they would be the ones, like it wouldn't be like the previous generation, but they would be the ones who would be comfortable actually moving the management piece to an online app, even though it's kind of a non-traditional thing, which is also why you said maybe that other couple or that other app couple didn't work and didn't get so much adoption, right? Because you didn't have the right mindset. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah, timing is everything. The idea that we've had when we sought out to solve this problem for ourselves, we saw that there was a product that had been around, but it was just defunct. It had a lot of the same kind of themes in the app from what we could tell as what we were trying to build, but just wrong timing. And I think people are getting so much more comfortable now in using technology to support their lives, particularly their personal lives. And it's really interesting. If you look at the average age of our users, they're, sort of 30 to 32. And most of them have had a couple of serious relationships, but this is the serious relationship. and a lot of them have met on dating apps. So it's a really natural progression to move from a dating app and then sort of, want to plan out dates and life with your partner. So yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that's interesting. And do you guys, I know you in some of the investor reports that you send out, you kind of tell us there's really interesting KPIs. Do you guys track things like, I mean, it's hard to track, I guess, but like I'm sure you're preventing a lot of divorces, right? I'm sure you're helping couples stay together. Do you guys kind of track that in any way? Do you think about that? Because I know there's obviously the dating apps, they have these, nice kind of heartwarming stories about it. There's couples that get married after meeting on this app or that app. But your app is kind of more like a prevention, right? So maybe how do you think about what's the way to get people excited about using it? Because it's a preventative thing, right?
Yeah, and it's a really interesting point you raised about prevention. And one of the things that we'd always wondered is, are we the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff? What is the state of our users when they're coming into this app? Because that would really impact the way that we talk to them and where our products, might go in the future. And so we thought we've got to address this in a really meaningful way. And we partnered with a researcher from the University of Auckland called Dr. Jessica Maxwell, and we went about surveying our users. So about 18 months ago now, we did our first ever relationship survey, and really got a pulse on how our users feel about their relationships and also how they feel about Cupla and the impact that it's had. But what we found is the people that are coming onto our platform are actually already in really happy relationships. So they're proactive, they love their partner, they trust their partner, and they just want to use this to enhance an already great relationship, which I guess for us we were a little bit surprised. We thought maybe the results might have been a little bit more neutral or even trending toward shit, we're in trouble. We need to use this app. It's great for us because what it means is that probably the longevity of these users is going to be better, that we're not going to see them churn off as their relationships collapse, which is great. And also just having that opportunity to be at the forefront of helping them sustain that honeymoon phase and that, that great relationship, rather than letting, having relationships get into trouble when people aren't focusing on the things that are important to them. So super interesting. And the other thing that survey did was really aim to address a question that we'd got from investors sort of time after time. We have this really lofty goal of wanting to increase happiness in relationships for couples globally, which no one's going to argue with. That's a great goal to have. But then being able to make the link between what we were doing from a product standpoint and our mission was sometimes a bit of a stretch. And so we knew sort of intuitively that we were making a difference, and we had seen some qualitative feedback from users in terms of, reviews on the App Store and emails and things like that. But we wanted to be able to put it into, numbers that we could really stamp as being legitimate. We included that in the survey, and we were able to say that, 65% of users say that the amount of quality time that they spend with their partner has increased as a result of using Cupla, and 70% of users say that it has made them excited about the future with their partner. So some really great outcomes from that survey, and it's something that we're really cognizant of tracking over time to ensure that we're achieving our mission.
And you and your partner, you're power users of that app, right? Because you're both running businesses, you have kind of children, so you just had a daughter 4 months ago. What's your personal experience? What's the personal experience? So do you think it had a meaningful impact on your relationship and your lives?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it is funny, isn't it? Because, even now, I will say to Will, hey, have you done the thing? And he might say, is it in Cupla? We are definitely power users of the app. We really make sure that our quality time is scheduled. And I think after having a child as well, it's really solidified the need for a Cupla because, you know, you're a parent, you can attest to your spare time just slipping through your fingers. And so if you're not really deliberate with making sure that you've got things in the diary, time can just get away on you so quickly.
And you and Will, you co-founded the business together. Would you recommend other people founding businesses with their partners? What's that experience like?
Look, it's not without its challenges, like any co-founder relationship. But I think for what we founded, you know, Cupla, an app for couples, there is no one that is going to be better suited to be co-founders for this business than us, just because the journey and the purpose is so personal to us. And so it makes it so meaningful doing it with your partner. And as you're going through life and coming up against these hurdles that life throws at you, thinking about how we can address it in our work, and it gives the work so much more meaning, and it just makes it so much more worthwhile when we're able to, you know, really get the product out there, know that we've made a win for ourselves, and know the impact that it's going to have on others. You know, from a work-life balance standpoint, it's always a challenge because I think it's hard to leave work at the door. You know, there have been sort of countless mornings where it's like 5 a.m. alarm goes off, quick check of the emails, and I'm like, hey, Will, are you awake to permission to talk about work? And so, you know, that quiet space that you might sometimes have when you come home and you say hi to your partner who has no idea how your day's been, that doesn't really exist. But on the flip side, I think we've progressed through a lot of problems a lot faster because we're jamming them out together, you know, at random hours. Yeah, it's been a really amazing journey.
Yeah. And I think a lot of founders also, I mean, there's a certain sort of loneliness in founding a business, right? And a lot of founders feel very lonely because they don't feel like anybody else understands kind of the challenges they're going through. It's probably very helpful to have a partner who is an entrepreneur themselves and, you know, even on this, working on the same problems together.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, there's two sides to that coin, right? Because the flip side of that is that there might not necessarily be the reprieve when you just want to switch off, but absolutely having someone who knows what you're going through it has been, yeah, incredibly helpful because there have been some really tough moments there. You know, we launched one of our date night products the day that New Zealand went into lockdown, and I actually got COVID that day and had to like call all my team and be like, I'm really sorry guys, happy launch day, but you all have to go and isolate now for 10 days. When you're going through those sort of challenges and then thinking about, you know, runway and restructuring teams and things like that, being able to talk to your partner who is also your co-founder, yeah, it's a really privileged position to be in.
Any insights that you've had about just the state of relationships in general? Because I know there's, you know, I've seen some stats around the number of kind of marriages declining and people putting off having kids, and for folks who are using dating apps, it's a very unfulfilling experience a lot of times.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, kind of you monitoring people who are in relationships, happy relationships, using apps to keep that on track. What have you learned about that maybe more generally, more broadly? Any advice for people that you have, given what you've seen?
Yeah, I mean, I think the divorce stat has been what it has been for the longest time, right? It's like 50%. If it's your second marriage, it's more like 75%. I don't really see that moving so much. It's pretty stagnant and has been for the last sort of 20, 30 years. I think what makes me really excited about being in this space and seeing our users come onto the app is how cognizant they are of the traps that many of us are falling into in terms of work, you know, lack of sort of work-life balance. I feel like date night and quality time, there have been a lot more sort of talk about how important it is, and you're seeing more sort of articles and things pop up on social around dating, and I'm really carving out that time. And it makes me really excited for our users to know that people are taking this proactive step to really protect their relationship. Yeah, I mean, I think it's great. And I think sort of that I guess that stigma around using technology for something like this is falling away. And I think it's really doing us a service, allowing us to have conversations like making sure you're putting that time for your partner in the calendar. Because I find it really interesting how much of a precedence, how much more weight we give things like work and, medical appointments and the like in our calendar, but yet putting our partner into our calendar is still a bit, it still seems like it's raising some eyebrows. I think all these conversations that we're having are definitely, going some way to eliminate that. And we're getting into a really exciting time where people feel like they can take a little bit more control over their lives.
So yeah, it does feel like there's some kind of stigma, right, around basically taking the same approach you take to like being productive at work to a relationship. Why do you think that is? And like, what are the blockers that people have?
I think people think romantic relationships need to be spontaneous, and that, there's a little bit of like magic that's lost by putting something in the diary. But, and perhaps that is true, that there is a lot of magic and spontaneity. But if it doesn't happen at all, and that's the alternative, then that's just not a viable alternative. So I think the reality is, for most people, we're all really busy, and if it's not scheduled, it just doesn't happen.
So what advice, is it a daughter or son that you just had?
Yeah, daughter, Margot.
What advice would you give Margot? Will you let her watch Disney movies around?
Well, Margot's not going to be dating for a really, really, really long time until she's at least 30. What advice would I give her? I mean, yeah, what I said before is, I think so true for me. And I think about this a lot, is just that, that quality of your relationships really defines you. And so make sure that you're prioritizing those, and whatever they may be, from friendships to family relationships. I think we should be really cognizant of making sure that our calendars are getting filled up with, the big rocks first. So thinking about who are the people that we want to spend time with, whether it be our close friends, and making sure that that's put in advance, and then letting everything else sort of slide in around it, because it's really easy to otherwise fill up the space with things that don't matter.
And I think the big rocks, you're referring to some analogy around filling a container with rocks.
Yeah.
What is that?
Yeah, the analogy is that if I've got a glass jar, and I put the big rocks in first and then the pebbles, then the sand can like flow around the glass into all the gaps, and everything fits in nicely. If I just put the sand in first, then there's no room for the rocks or the pebbles. So yeah, put the rocks in first.
I love that.
Yeah,
analogy. I love it.
Yeah. So what's the where are you with the business right now, and what's kind of the next big milestones coming up?
Yeah, so we have around 50,000 monthly active users now. About half of those are paying subscribers, mostly based in the US. And we have really focused on building out our utility features first. So for a consumer app to be successful, it really needs two elements. It needs utility, which creates, actual use. So this is what gets you opening the app every single day, and makes it part of your life. So the utility features for us are the calendar, the shared calendar, the to-do lists, that kind of thing. And then it also needs novelty. So what is the thing that sparks your users' interest, gets them to be super sticky, and gets them to be an advocate for your brand? And so that's the date night features that we've got. So we've really light touch on date night features at the moment. Users can set a goal, and we'll remind you about going on date night. But our next big milestone, and what we've been working on this year, is a AI-powered date night ideas engine. And so we talked about previously about, the friction that couples experience in trying to coordinate quality time. One of the major friction points is people just don't know what to do. And so you end up going back to like the same restaurant or doing the same thing and just having this really sort of, mediocre experience. One of the really important things about date night and how to get the most out of that quality time is making sure that those experiences are novel. There's a lot of research around this. So even if it's not a long experience, doing something that's different can really enhance your relationship and build that connection. And so this engine really focuses on finding what is local, what is new and novel. So it might be an event that's on, something that's time-bound, restaurant or something else that's just opened. And it's going to serve you those ideas in the app based on what your availability, yours and your partner's availability is, and what's in close proximity to you. So really, really exciting. It's something that we've been dreaming of since day one. Yeah, so we're hoping to get that out in beta before Christmas, which is now in like 4 weeks. So very, very soon.
Is this going to be available anywhere? So I'm in Sydney. Can I use it in Sydney? And can anybody use it in New York or wherever else?
Yeah, so we're focusing on the US first. It was really, really important to us that we built it in such a way that it would be available everywhere all at the same time. When we originally launched this idea back in 2020, we were thinking about attacking markets locally. Like one market at a time, and just having that, that approach of one city going deep and it was just ended up being so resource intensive. We had Will's kids and school holidays loading up data ideas and imagery and things like that. Just totally not scalable. Amazing product. And then when COVID hit and it didn't really work, and we pulled it out of New Zealand, when we went to attack this the next time, we just knew if we couldn't build it in a way where it was available right everywhere from day one, in a way with really light to no human touch, then we weren't going to do it. And so again, talk about timing, because the progression that we've had with AI over the last couple of years is we've really been able to utilize it in a way that's made this feasible for us. So yeah, I'm not sure if it will be available in Sydney. Most of our customers are in the US, so we're going with the US first. But when I say we're launching the US, we're launching everywhere in the US. Yeah, it's a big beast, and I expect Australia will follow soon after.
Great. No, looking forward to it. In the consumer space, obviously, like the US is kind of the big market that everybody's going after. How do you feel about kind of being in New Zealand, and do you ever think about whether it's necessary to be on the ground in the US?
Yeah, so it depends. I mean, I think building a product in New Zealand is totally doable. We actually have amazing talent down here, and it's cheap in comparison to working in the US. And so I think whatever we do in the future, we will probably base our product team and our engineering team here. With the feedback loops that we've created from our customers, we're able to still feel quite close to our customers being based here. I don't really think that's an issue. I think where we run into a few obstacles is just being able to have that sort of, just having that ecosystem, or probably lack of that ecosystem in the consumer space, where we can sort of have those really, conversations around tactics and things that just sort of happen organically because, you meet someone in a meetup and you're able to sort of bounce ideas off each other. That doesn't really exist here. And so in that sense, it can feel a bit lonely down here. And then I think the other thing is just when we're thinking about raising money for the next round, there isn't a lot of investment dollars that have gone into consumer in New Zealand. And I think as much as we have said COVID has enabled us to work from anywhere, I think when we think about raising money, it's probably going to need to be in person. And it is a lot easier to have those conversations when you're on the ground and understand who the key players are. And really build those relationships. It is hard to do when we're based in New Zealand. So I think we're probably looking at spending a decent amount of time in the US next year for sure.
Have you thought about moving there, given that all the customers are there, investors are there?
Yeah, I haven't told you this, but we've actually bought a one-way plane tickets. We're going to be coming up 1st of April, basing ourselves in SF for a while. So we will see how it goes.
Terrific.
But, yeah.
How's that work with the kids and you just having a daughter?
So Will's kids are a bit bigger now. So the youngest one is off to university. And we'll bring the new baby with us. So yeah, no, it'll be fun. It'll be good. It's good timing for us. So the team will still be based in the office here in New Zealand. And then Will and I will be out there.
Cool. And how then, I guess, from a perspective of you said 4 months ago you gave birth, right?
Yeah.
What's that been like? I mean, I guess first you were an expecting mother, and now you're a new mother. What was that like, running a startup with that?
Yeah, it's been really good. I mean, I've touched wood. I was just saying before that we haven't had many sleepless nights. So we've been blessed with the most accommodating child ever. But yeah, I mean, and this is where working with your partner is great, right? Because we were really mindful of what needed to happen in those early months, and we're able to sort of structure, sleeping arrangements and all that sort of thing to ensure that the team were on track. And because the team have been so busy building out this date product, the timing was just kind of perfect. There was a natural sort of, I guess, stop and pause that we were able to take while, the guys really concentrated on, building out this next product. So yeah, it's all sort of worked out really well. Touch wood again, because, with a child, things can change. Mark, I know you've got a young baby as well, so you know what it's like.
And any specific advice that you would give to folks who are, because I think for a lot of women, that is a big consideration, right? Like they want to have children, but it almost feels like it's never the right time, whether it's career. I mean, starting a company is it's a whole different kind of level, right? It's many times more intense than just having a job. How did you think through? Did you plan it ahead of time? Did you, set up anything kind of beforehand to make it easier for you to kind of do both?
Yeah, I mean, there's never going to be a good time, but I think having a startup is probably a particularly bad time to try and have a baby. But it's just, life happens, right? I think you've got to be realistic about what is going to be possible. Taking a year off was not going to be an option, but nor did I want to either. I mean, Cupla is my other baby, and so it was just really about setting up our life in a way that could accommodate both things and make sure that the business was still getting the best out of me as well, because we've really got an obligation to our users and our shareholders and our staff to make sure that we're not taking our foot off the brake, taking our foot off the gas, so to speak. So yeah, it was just about really trying to be mindful of how we went into this. Yeah.
If you were to give some advice to people who are kind of considering it or thinking about it and feeling like it's too hard to do both, what advice would you like? Any hacks, any tips?
It is hard. It is hard. Have low expectations and you won't be disappointed. No, but I think that is true. That is true. But just be really aware of who your support network is and who you can lean on. We were really deliberate in hiring A players for our team, and I think every startup should, this is obviously the goal for every startup, but it does mean that we don't have to babysit our team, and we fully trust them and we are able to rely on them. Having a co-founder that, can take whatever you need doing off your plate. And so, I'm all for people having really, really clearly defined roles when you're in a co-founder relationship, but actually being able to have some of that crossover as well has been really helpful for us. And then deciding how we want to be updated, and what decisions I need to be looped in on, and what can be delegated was really important. Pretty much right from the get-go, I'd already decided I wanted to do at least one day, even in the first few weeks after having the baby, and that was just enough to sort of keep my finger on the pulse for a few weeks until I went back into a bigger capacity. So it's worked really well for us. Look, it's not going to be for everyone. I'm not going to sugarcoat that. It definitely has its moments, but yeah, it's actually been probably less challenging than I thought it would be. And I think if you've run a business through really difficult times, probably running a child is, not as hard, dare I say it. It's, the way I've sort of explained this to other people is when you have a business and you have problems that, they don't go away usually overnight with, you go to bed, you stew on things, you wake up, they're still the same problems. But with a baby, those problems tend to disappear overnight and every day is a new day. So there's that. Yeah.
So maybe as a trial run, instead of having a puppy, people should actually do a startup before having a kid. It sounds like what you're saying, right?
Sure. Yep.
Great. Erika, thank you so much. This was really, really great. What I'd love to do is just ask you a few sort of quick questions. And yeah, if you just have quick answers for that, that'd be awesome. So in terms of, I guess my first question is like, what's your favorite date night?
Cocktails and dinner.
Any places to recommend in Auckland?
Oh, there are so many. I mean, we're like such foodies. And so, yeah, Mr. Morris, Kingy, Blueberries, and yeah, the list is endless. If you're ever in New Zealand, ring me because I will be able to send you a list of about 50 restaurants that you can go to. The food culture here is amazing. Yeah.
Amazing. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
You are the 5 people that you spend the most time with. Choose wisely.
5 people. Okay, I'll think about that. And what's your best recommendation for a book or podcast that you've listened to or read recently?
Yeah, so I've got a couple of books that probably aren't the sort of standard entrepreneurship books. Nonviolent Communication, which people might be put off by the title, but it's a really amazing book. Observing and understanding people's feelings and needs, and then being able to communicate your own. And I think, and how the language that we use shapes our conversations and our relationships. So I definitely recommend that one. Another one is Unreasonable Hospitality, which is actually a book about 5 Madison Park, but it is a masterclass, excellence and being like a servant to your customer. The cumulative impact of like a tiny, thousands of tiny details ends up having on someone's overall experience of your business. So yeah, definitely recommend those 2. The podcast I can't get enough of at the moment is Diary of a CEO. I think Stephen Bartlett is just a world-class interviewer. The way he manages to get information out of his guests by saying very little is really amazing. And he's obviously very successful in his own right. So yeah.
Awesome. No, thanks so much. These are really helpful. Is there anything else we didn't talk about that you'd like to add?
No, I think we've covered a lot, and yeah, it's been really great talking to you both. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Awesome.
And best of luck with Cupla and everything else.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for tuning in to TechMates. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with friends. We'll be back soon with more stories of Kiwi and Aussie founders reshaping the future and disrupting down under. Until next time, keep dreaming big and daring to disrupt.